is about as false as it can come.
Why is it that the phenomenon of rejecting Darwin, however large it is in America, Jim, however large or small it is more pronounced in America than anywhere else?
We're a frontier country.
Frontier country.
Yeah, that's my interpretation.
Why do you think?
I'll bow to it.
Okay, let me just say a word further and then let Jim respond, because this is just my personal conception. It's that when we're still a frontier country. We still have people around who live, or at least their parents were frontier people, and when we came, our forebears, no matter when they came over, but they came over from a structured hierarchical society in which everything was set for them, and if you had questions of morality, belief, and so on, you just went down to the nearest cathedral, and everything was pretty much in order. They came to this country. They didn't have that. They had to form tight communities to survive, and in order to do that, they had to have a moral system, a belief system, and they had to have an authority, and that authority came from Holy Scripture. And that's why they became literalists, many of them.
Well, I think there's something in our brain that wants to understand things. And human beings 3,000 years ago wanted to understand things. And so, and to have rules. And so I think developing religions was a very natural thing to do. Now, for those of us who are trained in science, everything seems much simpler without God. And, you don't have to worry about why did God let a child be born autistic?
It is said that what Darwin did is that it helped human beings, remember this was published in 1859, understand their place in nature.
Yeah.
That's obvious.
Yes.
We got it in terms of... Now, is the origin of the species more important than the descent of man?
Well, right now, the descent of man interests me more because
Explain the difference in the two, Jim. I mean, for an audience here with
one
using
wants,
two wise...
sort of deals with the question of, who are our relatives? Was a chimpanzee, gorilla, and he got it pretty right, considering the lack of it. And then he went on to write a book about emotions. Again.
That book really is a tremendous contribution that's not mentioned very much.
That was which book?
The expression of the emotions in man and animal.
Yes.
At what point in his life did he write that?
1872.
Okay, but I'm going to speak to. I'm not sure the difference in the origin of species and why are you interested in the descent of man?
Well, because,
which basically goes back and says that we are descending from...
Suddenly we've got the DNA sequence of the chimpanzee. We can really now see human evolution, and we can go out and begin to see the differences between the DNA of an Eskimo and someone who's living in the tropics. And so we really can now see evolution occurring at the level of DNA, which Darwin couldn't. But all his guesses were really right on mark. I mean, the man really...
It's stunning that he could do it not knowing anything about the structure of DNA.
That's a really good point about Darwin. Not only did he cover an immense amount of material, geology and biology, but the man was always right. It's exasperating to be an evolutionary biologist and try to develop something really new and find out that Darwin had either said it or he had had foresight to indicate it.
In my mind, Darwin was the most important person who ever lived on Earth.
Wait, Darwin was the most important person who ever lived on Earth?
Yes.
More so than Einstein, more so than anybody?
Yeah. Muhammad.
Muhammad.
Yeah, because for the first time, he actually saw what was happening.
And forgive me for this.
No, but if you say that truth comes from observation and experience, not from revelation, which was the way I was raised, then Darwin was the first person using observation and experience to really put man in his place in the world.
That's what I just said. He understood human beings understood where they fit in nature.
Yeah, so I think he just was colossally important.
Do you agree with that?
Well,
the most important person ever to live is what he said.
Yes.
Yes. You know, if you go through the founders of great religions, then you have to understand that they have just affected part of the world, and they are in contention with one another, and it's important, but it's not all important, because they really were basically wrong about where man came from and how we fit in the universe.
That's not saying anything against them. There was no science, and they couldn't have been right.
Yeah, and the vision they gave us really came from the late Iron Age and some desert kingdoms there, which were rather specific. That's the Abrahamic religion. But it is true that Darwin really cracked it, and finally showed us how, you know, to figure out pretty precisely where we came from and how we fit it in.
So he's, you know, he's the big hero in our lives. You know, now you can get later ones, but, you know, if you really think of it, he really was the first person who got it right.
Darwin, then what Francis and Jim did. What comes closest since this to being in that league? What comes closest but not in the league? Is it the mapping of the human genome? Is it what?
Well, Jim's going to have to, you know, you're going to oblige him to start denying it and telling us about Mendel and so on. But the point is there have been many major advances. I could cite one after the other.
Just cite one or two.
But you know, the most seminal was Darwin, first of all.
Right.
And then the next most seminal, and if Jim wishes, you know, he can say, well, Crick and I were we put the cap on. And a lot of other people had all the information put together.
Right.
And that's true. But that was the seminal development, that we had a molecular code that we really could understand and we could start using to piece together the whole process of the building up of life. And you can't beat that. It's hard to beat that.
Okay, but is there anything that after that?
The only thing that could beat it, excuse me for interrupting, the only thing could beat it is to show that there's a supernatural force guiding it.
That would be the killer.
I'd love to see it, but it hasn't gonna. I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
No, I think there's something that's out there, which is how we store information in the brain.
We've not talked about this before, haven't we?
Yeah, but what is, you know, what is a face? How do you encode it in your brain? How do you retrieve it?
That has the possibility of joining the ranks of really great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explore that for a moment. Tell me a little bit more. How we encode information, how we receive, and what?
Well, we know we receive it via our eyes or various sensory organs, and then it gets sent to the brain where it's stored. But we don't know how it's stored. We don't know anything about the architecture of storage.
And we don't know what the conscious mind is. Really.
And that's beyond that. I say the first one is you have to know what the information is.
Right.
That's the big one.
Incidentally, Darwin got that right, too. Darwin spoke of the mind. He said, that is the citadel that cannot be taken by direct assault. He said, and the meaning was, I sensed he understood this, that there would have to be all these other disciplines and sciences and discoveries that we were going to sort of sneak in, you know, over the ramparts and breaches and so on, and we'd take the citadel, but it's going to be a long time coming. But that's right, the mind, the human mind especially. If we could crack that in one dramatic insight or discovery, then that, you know, you would call that a landmark discovery.
Are we making progress?